On September 17th, 1998, he was sleeping in his room, unaware of what was coming, when suddenly someone struck him hard on the head. The first blow came from the butt of a gun, followed by a second and third. He was covered in blood, and the attackers fled. Darkness took over his vision, and in just a short time, he lay unconscious, soaked in his own blood. Neighbors rushed him to the hospital in critical condition. The doctors had little hope that he would survive. But fate had other plans for him, as his life had not yet reached its end, because this life was destined to end the lives of many innocent souls. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital, and when he regained consciousness, he saw his own condition and his mother, and he burned inside. The trauma took a heavy toll on his mother, and she passed away shortly after. Now, he was consumed by revenge. He decided that he would avenge his mother's death by making 100 other mothers cry. This is the story of Javed Iqbal, who terrorized Pakistan and stained his hands with the blood of 100 children. This story has one side, the one we and the world know, but there are many layers to it, so tangled that no one has been able to unravel them. We tried as well, but only got further entangled. However, we did uncover some new aspects that we will show you. In this journey, we learned what the journalist who first received Javed Iqbal's letter saw. When he opened the letter, the walls of his small office were covered in pictures, just pictures, scattered all around. We also discovered what the officer in charge of investigating this horrific case found. The walls of the room were adorned with photographs of all the children. In another room, there were drums lined up. What happened to the judge who sentenced him to death? How did he deliver the verdict that still leaves us all shocked today? And yes, while narrating, they revealed something new that gave the entire case a different color. He became consumed by revenge, especially after his mother's death, and this turned him into something beyond human. His family had their own things to say about him. They believed that if they'd just hired a simple lawyer, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Now, let's tell the story of Javed Iqbal, Pakistan's most notorious serial killer, in a way you've never heard before. In December 1999, the country was gripped by fear. Nawaz Sharif's government had been overthrown, and the nation was under military rule. There was an air of uncertainty, a silence before the storm, and this silence was shattered on November 22, 1999, when a heavy letter arrived at the offices of the Jang newspaper on Lahore's busy Davis Road. No one had any idea that this letter contained a terrifying secret. On December 2nd, days after it was received, the letter was opened, and the tale of horror and cruelty inside sent shockwaves through the country. When the letter was opened, it revealed a story of unspeakable horror. The room seemed to fill with images, and there were photos of children between the ages of 12 and 16, numbering about 103. As the editor sat stunned, the full horror of the letter began to unfold. Javed Iqbal, in his own handwriting, confessed to the rape and murder of over 100 children, detailing how he disposed of their bodies. He even wrote that he had come to a point where he wanted to surrender and face the consequences of his crimes. But he also explained why he hadn't turned himself into the police. He feared that if he did, the police wouldn't bring him to justice, but would instead kill him in an encounter. That's why he sent the letter to the editor of Jang instead, so the public would know, and there would be witnesses to his crimes. The newspaper broke the story on December 3rd, and it caused an uproar, with the news spreading far beyond Pakistan. Javed Iqbal had previously sent a similar letter to the police, but they hadn't taken him seriously, dismissing him as mentally unstable. However, after the *Jang* story went public, the police had no choice but to act. A search of Iqbal's house on Ravi Road revealed drums filled with acid and the clothes and shoes of children, confirming the horrors described in his letter. Javed Iqbal's crimes shook Pakistan to its core. He claimed to have dissolved the bodies of 100 children in acid, leaving no trace behind. The investigation intensified after orders from higher authorities, leading the police to Iqbal's house, where they found more evidence. He had carefully recorded the details of each murder, even documenting what the children were wearing at the time of their death. Despite his arrest, the mystery surrounding his crimes remains. Many questions about Javed Iqbal's psyche and motivations continue to haunt those involved in the case. Was he driven by revenge, mental illness, or something more sinister? As the full scope of his crimes came to light, the police, the judiciary, and the public were left grappling with the sheer horror of what he had done. The proceedings of this case continued for 2 months, during which Javed Iqbal repeatedly questioned the role of the police, and he wasn't alone. The judge, Alabakash Ranjha, was also not satisfied with the police investigation, claiming that they had complicated the case further. There was talk that the police were aware of his activities. It was impossible for someone to carry out such unsocial activities in a neighborhood or village without the police knowing. Some believed that the police were bribed, and because of this, they failed to thoroughly investigate the case. Javed Iqbal accused his friends of being involved in the crimes with him, saying they participated for money and enjoyment. He changed his statements several times. At one point, he claimed he was disabled, with poor eyesight, and couldn't walk without support, putting all the blame on his friends. Furthermore, he alleged in his diary that his family mistreated him, making his life unbearable. The judge, after hearing all this, sentenced Javed Iqbal to death 100 times, emphasizing that he was a monster disguised as a human. The ruling was that he should be hanged with the same chain he used to kill the children, and then his body should be cut into pieces in front of the victims' families, just as he had done to the children. His remains would then be disposed of in the same acid drums he used for the children. However, the reality was more complex. Some argued that Javed Iqbal suffered from various psychological disorders. His entire life, marked by trauma, had shaped him into what he became. From being a pampered child from a wealthy family, he faced various setbacks like failed marriages, business losses, and finally, the death of his mother, which pushed him over the edge. Despite the court's ruling, there was still uncertainty about whether Javed Iqbal had actually committed the murders. There was speculation that the 100 children may not have been killed and could have been kidnapped for other reasons, such as being sold for labor or sent abroad. In the end, on October 8, 2001, Javed Iqbal and his accomplice, Sajid Ahmed, were found dead in their prison cell, having allegedly committed suicide. Many, including Iqbal's family, doubted this, suspecting that they had been killed in custody. Regardless of whether Iqbal actually killed 100 children or not, his story remains one of Pakistan's darkest criminal cases.